Hey everybody, I'm JJ, you're watching Reality Survival, and so today we're going to talk about bartering. So I've got some notes down here and things that I wanted to talk about as we go through this, and so you may see me referring to these as we go along here. Why am I talking about bartering? So here in the United States, we're moving in the direction of having a currency reset where we shift from physical cash, a combination of physical cash and digital money, to all digital money. Now, I don't think that any reasonable person would argue with that. The only thing that might be up for debate still is that the timeline is still up in the air. We know that the Fed has the FedNow system, which is the backbone for the international exchanges to be able to do digital exchanges, immediately instead of having to wait several days to conduct a wire. And that is likely going to be the backbone for whatever digital currency comes. It's probably going to be a central bank digital currency. It's very low likelihood that it'll be a decentralized cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. It'll be something that the Fed can control and that they can program. Now, it'll be sold as having a lot of benefits to us when they initially try to roll this thing out. It'll be probably a slow transition. It's not going to happen all overnight and everything, most likely, unless there's some sort of a big crash and they have to institute it as an emergency fix. However, there's probably going to be a lot of pushback on that. And whether or not society, whether or not you guys decide to accept it, is all going to be on you, right? Who knows if that's going to happen or not. Now, some people might want to resist that, and one of the ways to resist that is going to be to use bartering. So I'm going to talk a little bit about bartering today, and we're going to talk about some of the psychological aspects of bartering and things that you can do to become a little better at it. So that's sort of the reasoning why we're going to go into this. Try to kind of dive deep into this thing here. Now, full disclosure, I'll let you know that I have not ever personally used bartering for life-saving supplies, right? Because I don't live in a time or an era where I have to barter or anything like that. However, I have been deployed 5 times to some of the worst places in the world, and I've spent many, many hours haggling with merchants in third world countries, and I would say that this is probably a fairly similar endeavor. I remember one time when I was in India, and I was talking to this vendor, and he told me, I was going back and forth with him, and I'm usually pretty good at getting guys, down to a reasonable level, or something that I'm willing to pay anyway. And he tells me, I said, I'm just curious. I said, how come you won't go any lower on this or whatever, And we had been talking for probably 30 minutes or something like that, and it had, kind of developed a little bit of a friendly banter back and forth. And he says, well, I'll let you know. He goes, it's a little thing of mine. He goes, it's shoes. I said, what do you mean it's shoes? He's like, well, the shoes are a window into, where people have been and kind of how they live. Because people who have money rarely ever wear really old and ratty shoes. He's like, I look at your shoes and I can tell that you have enough money to pay for this. And I thought, yeah, that's a pretty good way to make a really quick snap judgment of people most of the time. Maybe not always, but it is something that I've used many times since then in making a judgment on whether or not to help somebody, like as far as giving money to the homeless and stuff. If I see that, they've got a decent pair of shoes on, I'm always a little more hesitant because I'm thinking, man, maybe you're scamming or whatever. So anyway, just one quick tip up front and a little anecdotal story about one of the lessons I learned a long time ago. So I've done a couple of videos in the past that talk about security when engaging in barter transactions in previous videos. So be sure to check those videos out if you want. Because you have to consider your security during any barter transaction. You should always assume that you're going to be ambushed or ripped off or, mugged or whatever the case may be. Okay, so that is something that we're not really addressing in this video, but look at those other videos if you want to check that out. So as you probably know, bartering is an ancient form of exchange. No money changes hands. It's usually just either goods or services, and historically bartering has been crucial in times of crisis when traditional money systems fail. In a SHTF situation, your survival could depend on your ability to negotiate for the resources that you need. So personally, I've seen barter used frequently in markets in rural towns in Afghanistan. I hadn't actually used it myself, but I've watched many people do it before. And in collapsed economies, barter usually springs up before a replacement currency does. And if the situation is bad enough, like it was in Afghanistan, many people didn't even have money, even though it was available as a viable currency, so they would still barter to try to do what they could to trade with people in their tribe or their neighbors or people at the local markets for stuff that they had in exchange for stuff that they needed. So it is still used quite frequently in places, different places around the world. One thing to consider is that people's priorities shift dramatically during a crisis. So instead of luxuries and gadgets and fancy clothes, people are going to prioritize food, water, medical supplies, or some sort of unique skill or something like that that could be really useful. Now, during a crisis, we often see the scarcity mindset in action. This is when people perceive something as more valuable simply because it's in short supply. Think toilet paper, 2020. Right? Nobody was actually in a big need for toilet paper, but everybody thought that they were because there was a run on toilet paper. That's the scarcity mindset. So understanding these shifts in perception is crucial for successful bartering. So how can we use psychology to our advantage in bartering? First, we have to have empathy, and we do the best we can to build rapport with the person that you're trading with. This is really, really important. When you understand that the person's needs and you establish a connection with them, that helps you lay a foundation for a successful exchange. So you don't want to go into any barter action with an adversarial mindset of me versus them. It's got to be more of a, hey, we're all part of the same community. I want to try to do as much as I can to help you. Hopefully you'll do the same to help me. That's where you want to start with this. It's not just about trading, it's also about that human connection, because next week when you need something, they might be the person who has it. And so it's important to approach everything with mutual respect. I would suggest try to make every interaction as though you might become their friend, because it's quite possible that you could. And as much as possible, be generally interested in them and don't fake it. Actually show interest. Because everybody can pick somebody who's faking it right out the window, be interested. So another principle that we want to talk about here is the reciprocity principle. Now, humans have a natural inclination to return favors. So when you start bartering an interaction, when you start a bartering interaction by doing something helpful, the other person is more likely to reciprocate with a favorable trade. Now, you might have seen this demonstrated when you're dealing with car salesmen, when you sit down at the desk and they bring you a bottle of water or a Coke without even asking for it. That is them trying to use the reciprocity principle so that they give you something and you feel obligated to return the favor. Even though that bottle of water only cost $1 or $2, they feel like, the person on the buying end feels like, oh, well, he was really nice. He brought me this bottle of water, so I'm going to buy this car. Now, for a lot of us, that doesn't work, but for some people, it actually does. In an SHTF situation, you might want to come to an agreement on a trade, and then after the agreement is made, offer to sweeten the pot a little bit without asking them anything in return. So if you said, okay, I'll give you X for Y, and everybody is, kind of on board, and say, you know what, man, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you a couple more or whatever. If it's something that you have some excess of, it makes sense, and it's a good long-term investment to give them a little better deal so that they feel comfortable coming back and dealing with you in the future, and you'll get additional business, that kind of thing. Or when you go to where they're selling or whatever they have, they will treat you better as well. So creating that bond, like we were talking about earlier, is really, really important. Okay. Yeah, so the main thing there is you might not come out as good on that particular trade, but you'll likely find favor with them in future trades. And the important thing here is that people never remember what you say, but they always remember how you make them feel. That's a really, really important thing. It's just a lesson in life in general. People never remember what you say, but they always remember how you make them feel. Super important. All right. So then we've got the scarcity principle, and making an item seem rare or in limited supply can significantly increase its perceived value. This tactic, is used frequently in marketing and can be a powerful tool in bartering as well. If you're in an actual SHTF kind of situation, you might not have to fake this. The scarcity thing is very likely to just be real. There might be a lot of actual scarcity, but even if you have plenty of the item you're trading with because you had stocked up and all that kind of stuff, it might be in your best interest to not let anyone know that you have an excess of that thing, right? So, and maybe what that means is only bringing a small amount of whatever that you're going to be trading to the market. So it doesn't seem like you've got 3 ammo cans full of ammo or something if you were trading ammo. I can't wait for the comments on don't ever trade ammo. I've already done a video on this, so go look at that video. You definitely can trade ammo. But anyway, watch that video. All right. Let's see. Okay, so another thing to think about here is anchoring bias. So this is the human tendency to rely heavily on the first piece of information that they receive, which is the anchor when making decisions. So by starting with a slightly higher offer, you set the anchor shaping the rest of the negotiation. So by starting with a higher trade value and knowing that you'll take a lower amount, it'll help leave them with the impression that you're going to give them a great discount, even if the trade was clearly in your benefit. But just the thing is, you got to make sure that the offer is not too high and too ridiculous, because then they'll know that you're doing it. So keep it somewhere within what is reasonable, but maybe slightly higher, and then be willing to come down to what you actually wanted to get for it. It's a pretty common kind of technique or whatever. Okay. Again, so the important thing here is trying to create a real connection when you're using psychology, and this can really help move bartering transactions forward. Start thinking about what items or skills you might want to barter in an SHTF kind of situation, and then how you can apply those tricks. I would love to know what you guys think are good tips and tricks for bartering, and psychological ways to get people to be more inclined to do things that are favorable to you. If you could put those down in the comments, I think that would be really awesome. Anyway, if you guys like videos of this type that talk about kind of the what-if scenarios, the hypothetical scenarios, and that kind of stuff that could happen in a SHTF kind of situation, then maybe you should think about going over to realitysurvival.substack.com and sign up over there. Every month we have giveaways for the paid subscribers. This was last month's giveaway. It's going to be mailed out to one of our paid subscribers. Every month we do some sort of giveaway that is around $100 to $150 worth of value, something like that. And we've only got about 70 subscribers right now, so your chances of winning are pretty good. So, and I've got if you go to the most recent post, I think it's the post with the picture of this on it, then there's a 33% discount button in that thing where you can sign up, and it's only like $40 a year. So anyhow, appreciate you guys watching. Don't forget to live 6 P's. Proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. Stay safe, guys.